Hi all of you awesome scuba divers out there, welcome to Scuba Diving Magazine and welcome to Ask Mark, our scuba diving Q&A, where I, Mark, former dive instructor, do my best to answer your scuba diving questions. So if you do have any scuba diving questions, by all means pop it down in the comment section underneath this video. Use this Ask Mark hashtag in your comment to get it featured, and in the meantime I'll answer it as soon as possible, as long as I know the answer. If not, I'll try and find out the answer and let you know. And if you do see any unanswered questions in the comment section, do me a favor and answer them for me, because I do get quite a few. Today I'm answering a question from Ayunat Parashiv about longhose primary donate regulator setups. So Ayunat says, "Hi Mark, I have a multi-part question regarding the longhose setup I'm considering. I have a set of atomic regulators, an M1 for my primary and a Z2 Octo configured in the traditional setup. Questions are, number one, when I switch to a longhose, do I need to put on the Z2 Octo? It's not a fully yellow Octo, but it does have yellow tints on it. It always stays on a black hose. They're both similar in terms of breathing, but I'd rather have my M1 primary on it. Question two, should I go for a traditional rubber hose or braided? I also considered a miflex XT tech hose for the long hose. I'm mostly concerned about floatiness and scratchy feeling with the braided ones. Thank you and keep up the good work." Yes. So switching from a traditional, what I call a recreational regulator setup, where you have your primary on a relatively short hose and your alternate, your Octo, on a longer hose. If you're switching to a long hose primary donate setup, then yeah, I would just, first of all, they're your regulators. You can kind of do whatever you want with them. But I would put my primary on the long hose, because that's the one that you're going to be breathing from, and in and out of air situation your buddy is going to be breathing from. And I'd put the alternate, the Octo, in the necklace around the neck on the short hose. That's kind of the perfect position for it, because alternates and Octos are typically set up just a little bit stiffer. As you said, you don't tend to notice the performance distance. It just means it's a little harder to open that valve, only a tiny smidge, because they tend to sit on a hip and they're a bit more exposed and they're more likely to free flow, so the manufacturers set them up just a little bit stiffer. If you go to a service center and just say, oh hey, this is going to be my primary, can you set this up a little bit lighter, or set it up as you would a primary, they should be able to oblige. But yeah, you really want your M1 as your primary. The Z2 is fine, but it's better there for a like auxiliary position. So it would be on a necklace around my neck, whereas my my M1 would be in my mouth. And yeah, it doesn't really matter, or it shouldn't matter. There are some equipment configurations. Normally, if you have a like a fifth port turret style regulator, sometimes the airflow can be so powerful coming out of that fifth port, because the airflow, it doesn't have to, if you have hoses coming out of these ones around the side, the airflow kind of comes up, it hits a 90-degree and then has to turn, whereas if it's coming straight out of the top, it's a bit faster and a bit less work. So there are some configurations where when you set up that regulator, it's just so powerful it just causes it to free flow. Apex regulators are atomic regulators, sorry, it's because I was holding Apex. Atomic regulators are usually pretty good to combat that, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. So yeah, fit your primary to the long hose and your Octo, your alternate, to your short hose in a necklace. Most kind of setups, I mean, I don't, this is the only like Octo that I have. I tend to have multiple primaries, and they're set up exactly the same. But when I'm in the water, the one that sits in the necklace is usually dialed all the way in, so it's less likely to free flow, and it has the Venturi switch on, so that reduces the efficiency of the airflow, and that way it's less likely to free float. Sorry if that got my mic. It's less likely to free float around my neck. It's not a huge issue, but it's a consideration. Deciding on miflex hoses. These aren't actually miflex hoses, they're Apex high something braided hoses. That's a miflex hose, and rubber. I don't think I have any XT Tech hoses. They're quite a good like middle ground, the XT Techs, but I'll talk about them in a second. Yeah, the braided hoses from miflex, they are nice, and as long as you have something to hook it down on your hip, they're fine. I've been diving with a 2-meter long miflex hose, and that was in the Philippines most recently. And yeah, rash vests are usually quite good because they have a slightly longer neck, so when it is actually around your neck, it's not really touching, but you can get some kind of scratchiness. It's not horrific, but as they age, sometimes you get little little bits of this material sticking out, and it can get a bit more scratchy. But yeah, as far as floatiness, make sure you got something on your hip, like a drop down dive knife, or even a retainer bar. Mine's attached onto that. It is just a little bar of Delrin that just sticks down from your hip, and you hook it underneath that. Scratchiness, not much you can do about that. XT Tech is a good alternative because they're not quite as floaty, and they are smooth as well. You don't get the choice of colors if you want to add some color, but if you're down to your black hoses, then that's perfectly fine. Rubber, you know what you're dealing with when you got rubber hoses. They're tough, they're reliable, they are a touch heavier. So if you have a complete set of regulators with a rubber hose, and then you swapped out all your hoses for miflex ones, it's going to be a fair amount lighter, but they're smooth, they're mostly negatively buoyant, especially the longer hoses, so you know what you're dealing with. Personally, if I'm like getting new hoses, I tend to just go for standard rubber hoses nowadays. The braided ones, they're fine, they're good for travel, but yeah, I do still like a traditional rubber hose. But they're your regulators. You can do whatever you like with your own regulators. Yeah, a long hose primary donate setup is standard to have your primary on the long hose, as the name suggests. So the primary would be your M1, your Octo or your alternate sits on a short hose in a necklace around your neck, and then you switch to that if you need to donate your primary to your buddy. I wouldn't have the Octo on the long hose. There's no real need, and it's just going to increase your work of breathing. And the color, there's not a great deal you can do about the color. You just have to get another second stage. But hey, your Octo will, your Z2 will do the job. But I wouldn't put it on my primary. And as far as hoses, depends what's most important to you. Whether the benefit of the weight, if you're that much of a traveling diver, and those few grams are going to really help. XT Tech is that good like middle ground. It's light, but it's also not so buoyant, and it's smooth. They're a bit more expensive, but that's the trade-off, and they only come in black with that kind of stripes of color running through it. Otherwise, yeah, I normally lean more towards traditional rubber hoses nowadays. The miflex ones are fantastic and great if you want to add a bit of color. They've, touch wood, they haven't let me down as far as I'm aware. That they are good solid hoses, but yeah, if you're diving somewhere nice and warm, then you're not going to have as much exposure protection protecting your neck. So yeah, they can get a little bit scratchy, but hey, it's up to you. Any other questions or any other recommendations, let them know down in the comments below. If you do have any other questions, pop it down in the comment section underneath this video. Use this #AskMark hashtag to get it featured in an up and coming video. Otherwise, check out our website, scubadivermag.com. Check out our magazine subscriptions, our digital and print subscriptions, and if you want a free subscription, you can subscribe here on YouTube. Thank you for watching, everybody, and of course, safe diving.